So I did a poll on Instagram yesterday asking what people want to hear more about. And I put fat loss and muscle building. The overwhelming favorite was muscle building. Then I put, okay, based on that, is it training or nutrition that's the biggest challenge? And interestingly, nutrition came out as an overwhelming answer, to the point. I mean, the last time I checked, it was like over 90% of people picked nutrition. And that did surprise me, because I always associate fat loss and nutrition training with muscle building. Maybe that's just us. But it was interesting that people who want muscle building are struggling with nutrition. So I thought it'd be a useful opportunity to take this podcast to discuss, firstly, what that answer could actually mean, with regards to what actually people want. But also where pitfalls of nutrition come when it comes to pursuing muscle mass. So I know, Ed, before we were talking off air, you had a couple of answers on this. I think it'd be useful to kick this podcast off with that.
Yeah, so I think I was quite surprised when I saw it as well. And my initial thought was that the reason most people believe nutrition is the biggest issue is because of maybe a lack of awareness around how poor their training probably is. I think if you look at the average gym goer, most people are actually under the impression they're training pretty hard and they're doing pretty good sessions. And that's not me trying to poo-poo people's efforts or the fact they're getting in the gym is great. But the truth is, most people, when they are aiming to build muscle, their workouts, they're wasting their time with them, really. And I know when I first started PTing, I used to, sometimes go up to people and then offer, advice and things like that. And I don't know how you guys found it, but the overwhelming majority response I got was negative, or no, I'm all right. I know what I'm doing. I remember one time I heard someone slagging me off because I was trying to help them with a clean and jerk. And this guy, I'm sure he's probably in a wheelchair now. His back must have broken. But people don't really want to be corrected on that stuff often. And it comes from feeling like they already know what they're doing. So I think that's a massive part of it. But I also then think, with regards to nutrition, whether your goal is fat loss or muscle building or even maintenance, unless you have some structure around it, some control, you're never going to achieve any goal you want anyway. And I think that's an issue that is relevant to people with, like I said, all different types of goals. And that's probably what people are more aware of or more conscious of, just the lack of consistency and structure they have. And then I think with regards to nutrition and for muscle building specifically, there's so much information about there of, all right, should I just maintain my weight? Should I let it increase slowly? Should I just bulk hard? What does bulking hard mean? Does it mean just eating like 10,000 calories a day? Is it all chicken and white rice? Is it McDonald's every day? And so I think that's where probably people then start overthinking or just question what they're doing, really.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one because I would have thought the same. I would have thought that nutrition would be more closely tied to fat loss, where people struggle with, because that is literally the number one tool when it comes to dropping body fat, right? So, but when it comes to muscle building, though, I feel a lot of people also feel like they have a lot more leeway, or they're like, oh, I can just get away with this. I can have more takeaways this week. I've got heaps of calories to play with because I'm bulking, right? To bulk, I need to be eating a lot of food, right? So I think what happens is over time, their 3S's start to go. They lose their structures. They don't pay attention to quality of food. They don't pay attention to other lifestyle factors such as, sleep, recovery, stress, all of that can also be impacted by poor diet. You know what I mean? So it sort of has this cascading effect, and which then ultimately just leads to poorer performance in the gym. And in fact, when you are muscle building, we've spoken about this before, but everything needs to be lined up much, much more effectively than when in a fat loss phase. Like in a fat loss phase, you can get away with a lot of dumb shit. You know what I mean? But in a muscle building phase, you pay for those things. You pay for that poor night of sleep. You pay for potentially eating something that doesn't agree with you, or you pay for you can feel the difference when you have 1,000 calories from McDonald's versus 1,000 calories from, I'm going to say it, clean food. Everyone knows what we mean when we say clean food. It's a huge difference between just the quality there. And I think people just, they think, oh, I'll just get, as long as I get my calories in and I see the scale weight going up 0.5 kilos or a kilo a month, then that's great. That must mean all the weight I'm gaining is muscle. But I think there's that huge misconception too. So I think people just, underestimate what factors contribute to muscle building, and they also downplay the importance of the quality of their nutrition when it comes to muscle building. Maybe that's what people mean when they say nutrition.
So when it comes to like muscle building and making sure you're eating right and getting the balance between flexibility, living a life and muscle building, because I don't think there's many people listening here that are professional bodybuilders. For all of us included, how do you strike that balance? Because yes, we know quality food is important, but how do we strike the balance between flexibility and continuing to make muscle gains without blowing the gasket and finding yourself, shit, I need to diet? Because I think that's what happens with a lot of people is, like you said, the 3S's go, and you get a little bit more leeway. You start adding that first time you start adding margarine on your toast. You know, it's always the first time that's the worst, right? Then it's it's the extra chocolate finger. Then it's the next thing you know, you've completely lost it, and you're not muscle body anymore. You just seafood. You're just on a seafood diet, right? So how do you strike that balance between flexibility and making gains?
I think that the biggest thing here is not viewing what the fat loss phase as just, or the key ingredients of a fat loss phase just for fat loss. So by that, I don't mean a calorie deficit, but I mean like nailing down your 3S's and actually getting that structure in place, finding a good routine, finding what works for you in terms of meal frequency, meal prepping, the meals that you like to be eating, the flexibility that works for you. Because ultimately, the lifestyle change that we're talking about, people often associate, all right, that's a fat loss phase. I hit my checkpoint, or I want to build muscle now. All right, I'm going to stop tracking. And because I actually think for most people who are in a muscle building phase, they're not even really tracking calories. They're like, oh, I've just got to eat loads of food. I'll just get a load of protein in. That's kind of stuff you hear, isn't it? It's like, well, all you're doing is just eating way too much food. Most of it's junk. So it's like, if you just take exactly the same approach you did to your fat loss phase, but the calories and the macros are just adjusted to meet your needs now, then you're going to have everything locked in. Your sleep's going to be good. Your hydration's good. All of that's going to aid them with your recovery. You're going to make sure that you're on top of your schedule, so you're getting your gym sessions in, and then your food is supporting your goal. It's exactly the same whether you're in a fat loss phase or a muscle building phase. Now, because of the food being higher, it means that potentially satiety isn't going to be such an issue. Hitting basic micronutrient intakes, fiber intakes, stuff like that isn't going to be such an issue. You could probably hit that depending on what your numbers are, but you could hit that and then still have 20, 30, 40% of your calories still to go. That's where potentially more flexibility can come in. But you can only really do that if you've got that solid structure to be flexible on top of. If you're just picking random things as you go, you walk into the shop on your way to work, you're like, oh, what do I fancy today? Or I'll have a Greg's sausage roll. Then at lunchtime, you're just going out. You're like, oh, there's a bit of protein in that, a bit of protein in that. But you don't really know what you're doing. You don't know so you have the sausage roll one day, you have a cream bun the next day, but then like the cream bun day, you're hungry at 10 o'clock, then whatever. And you don't really know what's going on. You're not controlling hunger. You're not really controlling energy levels. And so if you've got that structure in place, yeah, maybe that little top extra bit of the calories, you have more flexibility on a daily basis. Maybe you use it for some quote unquote less clean food. But that comes down to individual preference and how much variety you want. But as the overview is that the approach is pretty similar. You just have a little bit more wiggle room because calories are higher.
Cream buns and sausage rolls.
Flexibility. Yeah.
Cream bun diet.
Yeah.
Well, I go to the gym early, right? It's on the high street. So I leave the gym at 7:30. And that's, when people are starting to commute and you see like people, and there's a Greg's on the high street, and like the amount of people that just come and like who just buy Greg's. I mean, it's not like really priced in there, but you add that up, it's probably spending quite a lot of money each week on Greg's, and you're just fueling yourself with crap every day, aren't you? Like, it's crazy.
It feels horrible as well, eating that at 7:30 in the morning, eating sausage rolls. Can you imagine that?
Man, I obviously I wake up very early, but before I head to the gym, like I'll get a double espresso, and the only places that are open that early are usually like bakeries. So I'll go to a bakery at maybe like 5:45 a.m. or something. And then I'm ordering like a double espresso. And then there are people that like ordering, sausage rolls, pies, just on the way to work, right? That's their breakfast. And I'm like, man,
maybe they're on
what's
something.
going on here? Yeah. it's mind baffling. And then I'm like, man, this person's about to go to like a construction site, or because usually in like overalls, I'm like, how are they meant to perform at their highest level? You know, like what's going to happen? There's going to be an accident waiting to happen. You know, like those are the things I like to think about in the morning. But on what Ed said, I think he nailed it, meaning that you need to have that structure in place first before you can then practice flexibility. And flexibility should also be structured, meaning that you don't just walk through the shop and go, oh, well, I'm more flexible now, I'm just going to have a chocolate bar. That's not, you're not planning that, right? So there still needs to be planning. And whether that's having a little bit of, say, unclean foods every day. For example, I'll have kids cereal every day as part of my overall diet plan. Would I be better off potentially replacing that with more potato, more veg, more fruit? Maybe I may be healthier, but I love kids cereal and I want to incorporate kids cereal into my daily meal plan. And that allows me to stick to my plan, enjoy it, and still get the benefits of my entire diet. Some people like a different approach. They like the structure of having, say, quote unquote, clean food Monday to Friday, and then having more flexibility on the weekend with their partner to be able to go out and still enjoy food that is still within their calories. It's still structured, it's still planned. It's not just going out willy-nilly buying sausage rolls and milkshake from wherever. They're still structuring their meals. So they're still planning around it. There's just more flexibility within the structure. But this just comes down to your own personal preference. If you like to have something sweet every day, people can then, okay, at 3 p.m. I have a couple of squares of dark chocolate with my yogurt or nuts or oats or whatever it is. And that could be their flexibility within their overall structure. This is going to be dependent on the person. And, as we've said before, there's no such thing as fattening foods, only fattening amounts. And when people can start to incorporate these foods, I think over time, it is just going to make the whole eating process that much easier. But as Ed said, you need to have that structure in place first before you can add flexibility on top of that.
Yeah, I think for a long-term muscle building phase, that's definitely the way to go. It's like it's 80-20 on it, right? 80% what the foundations are, and then 20% is your kids' cereals.
Definitely.
Your brioches, your whatever the things are, but not having them. I think the really important point is not snacking on them. It's having them as structured meals. Snacking is where the issues come in, right? It's because then you start slipping your standards. You don't have any standards because you've got no rules in place. If you have the rules of set meal times, then you build the sort of 20% on those. And I think that can help. That can actually help a lot in terms of keeping the muscle building diet interesting, but also adding that flexibility element in. Because I think when you really are structured in a muscle building and you've built that you kept your 3 S's in place. And let's assume now we're talking to the people that are on it with their muscle building and they actually are, they're not taking a piss with it. For them, it's going to be easier just to get the calories in as well. Because if you are on it, your calories will get to a point where your performance is going up, your calories are going up. You're probably at a point where it's getting quite hefty in terms of the calorie amount. You don't want to be eating white potatoes and chicken just to get those calories in. So that's where the flexibility element can be really useful in just getting calories in without killing your satiety. Because there is also that game as well. It's like when your calories get above probably 3,500, 4,000, you've got to balance satiety with quality of food as well. Because if you're only eating fibrous foods, it's going to be very difficult to get to 4,000 calories, but also your stomach's just going to be in bits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that is something that gets talked about quite a lot when it comes to muscle building. I think it's very relevant for a certain percentage of people. Truth is, most people who are listening to this are not getting to the point where food is so high that they need to add in these more energy dense foods, or not even energy dense, but like less clean, but that doesn't mean they can't, but it just means it just needs to be, like Ivan said, a conscious decision of like, I'm going to reduce my potato to have some cereal because that is going to, on balance, improve the quality of my life, or, whatever on that. But yeah, I think when it comes to muscle building, the thought from the internet and normally from, probably the drug enhanced kind of crowd is, it's stuff in your face with food, it's the struggle to get the food in. The reality is, for most people, especially when they're earlier on in their fitness journey, even muscle building calories, whether that's just above maintenance or even aggressive surplus, is not going to be a crazy amount of food. And that's probably not going to be an issue. In fact, I'd say when you're first starting off, especially if you're taking a slower rate of gain, satiety is still going to be a consideration in the muscle building phase in terms of managing satiety. When I say managing, I mean like not getting hungry rather than like stopping yourself getting too full. For most people.
I think the only time, it's a good caveat, because I think the only time people have run into satiety issues is when you're dealing with that skinny rip type person who's very naturally skinny, naturally stays very lean, and their biggest thing is they just need to eat. Those are the people that need to set the alarm clocks to eat, use really energy dense foods. But I think, like you said, for most people, it's just a slight surplus is all they need to do. And that can be tough to kind of rein in as well, right? Because mentally you're like, I'm in a surplus, but I can't stay in order to stay in this phase for 12, 18, 24, 36 months that I need to, I've got to keep control of this surplus. So it's playing a game where you're trying to keep control on something you're not seeing immediate results on. With fat loss, you keep control, but you see immediate gratification on it. Here, you're playing like a seriously long game, and that can be hard. And I think that's where the mindset shift has to happen for people to be able to stay in that muscle building phase for long periods of time.
But I think the great thing about the muscle building phase is, you may be in this sort of limbo in like, is my maintenance 3,000 calories or 3,100 calories? It doesn't really matter too much. But what matters is, are you performing in the gym? Are you improving over time? Meaning that as long as that is moving up and moving forward, and your form is staying good and your numbers are actually matching up with technique, which is a huge issue that we can probably discuss before. But if that's all moving in the right direction and your weight is slowly coming up, then whatever your calories are, they are what they are. You're technically at a good place, right? So I think too many people get caught up thinking, okay, well, what is my surplus? Is it 10% surplus, 20% surplus? Does that mean I've got to be eating 3,500 calories, 4,000 calories? It's just like, well, no, you're focusing on the wrong metric here. Right? What the metric you need to be focusing on is your gym performance. Once you're maxing everything out there with regards to, okay, am I getting enough sleep? Am I managing my stress? Am I managing my stress well? Am I seeing improvements week to week and stuff? If all that is moving in the right direction and your weight is trending in the right direction too, then it's safe to say that your nutrition is probably in the right place as well. So I don't think you have to worry too much about, am I hitting the exact calories and macros to build muscle, because your performance in the gym will tell you everything you need to know.
And then the other thing to remember is when you do get to the point where you're dieting down, this is always like the humbler, is you're not going to diet down and be 5-10 kilos heavier. I've just not seen it, right? I don't know about you guys. I've not seen it in anyone. I've not seen it myself in the naturals crowd anyway. To spend 2-3 years building and end up, let's say your last time you were 70 kilos, you're going to end up at 75. It's just not going to happen. Like, I think getting your head around that is going to save a lot of headache, heartbreak when you get to that point and you realize you're similar sort of weightish at the end. You should look drastically better. And you will look better, but don't underestimate how much 1-2 kilos can look on you, especially if you're leaner than last time and you've got more muscle than last time. That can make such a difference in your look. So just again, it's coming back to the last episode we spoke about with how heavy would you be when you're lean. It's detaching from that scale weight and looking at the look, combining it with the look as well, because that will save a lot of heartache.
I think that also links in with what the podcast we did before about the second diet always being easier. Or subsequent ones, because if you do build muscle during an investment phase and then you hit the same checkpoint or shoot or competition or whatever stage weight when you diet down, then you will, because you've added that muscle, like you said, be relatively leaner. But because these subsequent diets, although they're not going to get easy, become really easy, it's still going to require effort. But getting to the same condition you were in the first time is going to come easier. So then when you push really hard, you're actually going to be able to exceed that as well. So each time you are probably just getting leaner, which, linked in with the increased muscle mass, obviously what you're saying about looking a lot better at the same body weight.
What been your comparison, sort of weights when you've dieted down?
So when across the 2 shoots, I think I was probably lighter in the second one, I reckon. The last couple of weeks, my digestion went, excuse the pun, to shit. And so the scale was it wasn't really giving me a very accurate representation at the end. But considering what my rate of loss moving into that and then how far out it was, I would be pretty confident I was probably maybe half a kilo to a kilo lighter in my second shoot. But I would say I had significantly, and when I say significantly, it's not like 10 kilos, but more muscle. I had 2 years in between, and it was probably like 2 relatively productive years of muscle building for me as a natural person. So I think I was considerably leaner, but also had more muscle, but was also lighter.
Yeah. If you were to do it again, how lean would you want to get?
If I was to go again, I'd like to beat the last time. I don't think I'd see the point of going to not beat it, I think. But yeah, we'll see when that is, potentially. I
was going to ask you, Ivan, but it's a hard comparison, isn't it? Because you've never...
I only did it once, really, and then come back down, no.
Yeah, but also like... Go on.
I was going to say, I spent pretty much my whole life was just sort of at that maintenance or surplus sort of level. Slight maintenance. I was looking back, I was always in a slight maintenance. I was never really dieting for like a good 10 years to be.
So did you ever get like beach lean or so, or you always kind of beach lean?
I was always kind of beach lean. I remember my fat stays in my legs, right?
So, yeah.
Just wears baggy board shorts.
I've never had
ready for the beach.
Pretty much. Yeah.
With your body weight now that you're so lean year round and you don't train for muscle, do you find has your body weight just held? At all times?
Yeah.
Or have you found has it gone down? Has it gone up? Like, because you don't train as heavy as you used to, right? How's that impacted?
No, I would say it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
I personally think my upper body, I think looks better. I would say, because I think when I came to you guys, I was already doing a lot of the calisthenic stuff, but I'm a lot stronger now with a lot of those exercises, and certain body parts have definitely like developed a lot more. Like I'd say like my upper back and traps is actually a lot bigger than what they used to be in like different positions. You may not be able to see it now. I was like flare them, So, but I would say my legs have definitely come down in size, like muscle wise. Definitely lost a lot of mass in the quads. Definitely lost a lot in the hamstrings and the glutes, but they're still like really lean. They're still like, I'll say like I still got striations in my glutes. My hamstrings are still like dug out, but they're not like thick. Do you know what I mean? They're not as thick as they used to be. So I would say I've definitely lost muscle mass there, but my weight is still like 77 and a half. So like a kilo and a half off my leanest, so to speak.
It's a random question I asked a couple people the other day. And I don't know, when I said it, I was like, I don't know if that makes sense for people like us. So would you ever downsize? Like, I mean, Ivan's probably someone who has downsized. Would you do it? Like, would you actively downsize in the future? Not to say we're so big at the moment, downsize, but
I'm 78 kilos soaking wet.
You still have to to stay where you are. You still have to train pretty hard on at least a frequent basis, right? Do you think you'll ever downsize and be okay with it?
I think quite a lot actually about 10, 20 years ahead. I think maybe because of like having a son, I think like, what will I be like at this, like, and you're around more parents and stuff. In my head at the moment, I think I wouldn't downsize from muscularity point of view, but I'd probably aim to sit a little bit leaner.
Yeah.
So like weight and like I guess overall size would be down a little bit. I wouldn't like pull an Ivan and just walk around shredded. It'd probably be like a couple of kilos. Although I do think, say 20 years time, will my appearance be as like health will always be important to me. Will my appearance be as important? Would I then trade keeping a couple of extra kilos on for maybe some more flexibility? Potentially. But I can't imagine, I don't think I have enough muscle to want to downsize. I can't imagine myself getting to that point.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I think what would be really interesting is to know about we always know that it takes a lot less to maintain your muscle than to build it. Mm-hmm. But what that really looks like in practice in terms of how little can you do to maintain what you've got if you wanted to pursue other activities? Sort of like what Ivan's done, right? Like what would have been the least amount you could have done, you can do to keep what you've got? if, for example, let's say in the future, you just wanted to train twice a week, but you wanted to do more, I don't know, you wanted to do more hikes, you wanted to do more sports with your son, as an example there, right? What would that look like?
Yeah,
I think personally, I'll comment here because I've already started taking that path like a couple of years ago, right? But it all came into this with the shift of I care about how I look. I care about what my body can do, and when I train for those sort of things that I really want to hit, whatever my physique looks like as a byproduct, so be it. And as we said, luckily for the stuff that I want to do, I still need to have some muscularity. You know what I mean? I can't hold an iron cross with no arms or like no shoulders, right? Like I have to have musculature there. And there are certain things that require musculature to be there. But yeah, with regards to training solely to keep that size, no, I don't have that interest at all, to be fair. Like I train more for function, train more for performance and overall fitness. And luckily, I think because I've accrued a decent amount over my lifetime, I can hold on to some, and I'm happy with what I've got. And so I wouldn't say I was actively downsizing, but I definitely wasn't actively trying to maintain a bigger look, Yeah. So I think, again, it's shifting that focus on, okay, well, yeah, what do you see yourself doing with your body in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? And then you'll slowly start to work your way there. I think a lot of it comes down to ego. That's what it comes down to. Thinking that it makes you who you are, being bigger, being, you know what I mean? And that's the truth, and that's fair enough. But, I think a lot of it can resolve itself because I think as you get older, you realize, well, yeah, it matters, especially in our industry. Physique does matter. We want to practice what you preach. But it's sort of, okay, well, how do you define practicing what you preach? Like, is it having a ton more muscle mass, or is it just being in shape, being fit, being really lean? Is that what the longevity is here? Because, we've seen it recently. I know this is an extreme example. Bodybuilders is dying, super young. And yes, a lot of that comes down to anabolic use, but also just comes down to just being so big. Being a huge human in and of itself comes with its risks.
Just caveat what sort of size you're talking about. We're not talking about we're not talking about our size.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Of course.
These are like 250 pound bodybuilders. Yeah. 250 pound bodybuilders.
Yeah. But again, like it's, being so massive in and of itself is coming with health consequences. Yeah. I know none of us are going to ever have to face that, but think of the longevity, right? Like how much muscle are you going to really want to walk around with? Like how much is it really giving you?
And I was shocked when I heard about Sean Roden popping off, right? And then there was some bodybuilding chat around in some forums, like, is it linked to the COVID jab? Is that why we were getting more and more bodybuilders popping off? Because I don't know, whatever drugs they take, I don't know, it doesn't react well with the COVID jab.
Well, I think the thought behind that
it's always gone.
Is because of the links with the blood clots.
Yeah.
With COVID and or the vaccine. I think that's the link I heard to why this year is worse than others. But because Cali Muscle had a heart attack as well that weekend.
Did he?
Yeah, he does 20,000 calorie binge days. That's why.
Yeah. I think for me that as I get older, I think just learning to sit at a leaner body weight is what I'm keep thinking, drawing myself towards. As I've gotten older already, like in the last few years, I've gradually moved my maintenance point lower and lower. And I just think without it being to the point where it sacrifices how I feel. But I think it feels like that's the way to go. Because a couple of years ago, sitting at 78 kilos year round would have felt impossible. That would have felt like that would have been suffering almost. But now it feels so natural. So it's interesting how that moves, and it could even get lower. So
yeah, I think it's just accepting that, or it's coming to terms with it. Or I guess detaching your identity from your muscularity as well. And we all have that. I think we're all gonna, as being in the fitness industry, I think it's just part and parcel.
Well, as long as you're not being that person who relies on what you used to be 3 to 5 years ago plus, then you're all good, right? This is the biggest thing now, right? You do a photo shoot, and then for the next 3 years, you're just using the same old pictures for 5 years. Some cases,
could do that. But yeah, I think if you switch the emphasis on performance or expressing your body in a different way, I think those things have a lot more longevity. Because you can always find different pathways to go down.
And it's similar to like what you said, Ivan, about not worrying too much about the calories that you need to be on, but just seeing, am I making the progress I want? Okay, with these calories, oh yeah, perfect. Then these are the calories. That's the same for body fat percentage and weight, either at like long term when you are looking at that sweet spot. Like, it doesn't really matter if, like, say for like your example, actually you're saying you're holding around 78. It doesn't really matter if the number is 75, 78 or 80. If you're healthy, you're performing well in the gym, you perform well at work, you're happy with how you're looking at yourself, like all of these things, like the actual numbers then just don't really matter. And like, you know, me and Ivan are actually quite similar weights. He's way more shredded than I am now. So like, if I was to compare that, I'd be like, it's pretty depressing. But actually, it's like, well, I'm just in a good place for me, my health. And, you know, that's why like I track some health markers, I track gym performance, track how I'm feeling. I guess like not really formally, but like, I know I could take my shirt off on the beach now and I'd feel good about myself. But I know in a couple of kilos time, I would still take my shirt off. I wouldn't feel quite as good. Another couple of kilos, maybe I'll keep the shirt on. And so
best only.
Yeah, maybe baggy hoodie. But maybe that's an issue I need to sort myself. But I think it's finding those, is looking at those things rather than these actual numbers, because those things dictate the number that's right for you in all these cases.
One thing I've noticed recently is with regards to how you feel at certain body weights and performance, I think consistency is, and as boring as it sounds, is really overrated, because I think you can hack yourself to stay at a certain body weight, or you can do consistent things and you just feel amazing at a certain body weight. And consistent things in all areas, especially like with sleep and like just general day-to-day habits. If you do those consistently, you could make that same body weight just feel like a whole different ballgame. Because I was trying to track this year, like when did I, because I've been at roughly the same body weight, I was like, when did I feel the best? And I realized it's that more than anything. It's almost, yes, that has a massive part to play, but I think how you express that feeling at a body weight is determined by your body gathers momentum. It loves it, right? Your body really loves consistency. It's why we talk about no program hop, keep the same lifts, keep the same similar sort of foods. I think your body just loves it, right? It just craves routine and consistency.
You created an optimal environment to stay at a certain leanness without trying. That's what you've done, right? You've manufactured your life in a way that allows you to maintain that level without too much effort. And yeah, you're right. I think it makes a huge difference, you know. And an easy example would be if someone read your intermittent fasting blog, or someone tried to adopt intermittent fasting because it worked so well for you, and they've been trying to do intermittent fasting for God knows how long, and they could never maintain a lean condition because they'll just get too hungry by the time their first meal came and they just overdo it. And they just kept going this binge restrict cycle. Then that same individual just goes, well, you know, I'm just going to have like 4 square meals per day. And now they're eating 4 square meals per day, same calories, same everything. And now they're finding it far easier to maintain that same condition, all just to do with changing their meal timing or meal pattern. And then imagine you take those aspects and you sort of compound them. You structure your work day better. You prioritize your sleep. You remove toxic people from your life. You change the environment in your house to be more conducive to a lean lifestyle. All of a sudden, you're maintaining a condition that you thought was impossible because you've done all these like little 1%ers that now accumulate to like 20, 30, 40%ers. And I think that's really underutilized and I think misconstrued, to be fair. I think you can do a lot with those things to help you sit at a certain body weight, and people just take it for granted.
I think
go.
So I was going to say, I think a big or a really easy way to find if you're trying to hack a body weight or it's actually you're in control of it is to look at how you deal not only with social occasions, but then like after them as well. Because if you're really in control of your body weight, and it's going to be a range, it's not going to be exactly on the number, but you can go through, say recently had Diwali, you're not going crazy there because you don't feel restricted in the lead up to it. You can enjoy it, but also then when the festivities are over and you get kind of into normal life again, you just return to your normal plan. And yeah, there might have been a fluctuation, but it kind of balances out. If every time you have a night out or a holiday or anything, you one, go crazy, and or two, have to then do a mini cut or cut your calories to then try and balance things out again, you're not in control of that body weight. You're just trying to hack to stay within that range. Like you drop out of it, so then you diet till you get back into it.
You won't feel good.
Your average across the week, month, year might still be in that same range, but you're not controlling it. That's the ultimate hacking thing. I've definitely been there, in the past. And it's like you said, the weight then is irrelevant. Because also when I was just thinking, I hadn't thought of that before, but about 4 or 5 months ago, I was sitting at 82 kilos. And I thought that was my sweet spot because I felt good. I was performing well. Over the summer, I dropped down a little bit I'm about 78 kilos now, holding it. I feel like this is my sweet spot now. But because all of my routine, nothing else really changed. My routines stayed the same, sleep, all of that stuff. I still feel really good at this body weight. In fact, I just enjoy it a bit more because I just look a little bit better. So the other, the performance stuff has stayed exactly the same for me. And so I think that's actually a massive part of the topic of finding your sweet spot. It's not actually always about the number, but the structure that you have around that number.
Totally. I had a comment on the 12-month thing. The Diwali thing, or just festivities or whatever. And I think I had a question. I had a question this week saying, why have you made RNT 12 months minimum? And my reply was a couple parts to the reply. The first part was, I don't want to have people coming in for 3 months and then 3 months they leave and 3 months later they're back to the same weight as they were before, because we know that you can get in shape in 12 weeks, but most people, if they do that and they leave, that they're going to end up back where they were. But the bigger answer was, it's important that you go through all the cycles of the year and you go through all the events and the festivities and the stresses and all the different circumstances that you will typically face in the different seasons of the year. And if you can master all of those and you can get in shape and stay in shape through all the different seasons, you set yourself up for a bigger chance of success in the future. And that's the real kicker, because we all know December is a notorious month for people to gain a couple pounds, probably 10 pounds. It's very easy to do so. We know around your birthday, it's always easy to gain 5-10 pounds. Like, it's all these different things. It's managing the holidays, the summer holidays, and how do you build a lifestyle solution and structure that works for you all throughout the seasons, not just when you've got a clearing of 3 months where you're focused on dieting. It's not, how do you do it when you're not focused on dieting and your goal is muscle building or your goal is maintenance, and you can withstand all the different seasons to keep making progress. That's the definition of like body transformation success in the future. But it takes at least a year to do that.
Well, yeah, I think what you just said before, it may take you 12 weeks to have a physical change, but it does not take you 12 weeks to transform. That is not the case at all. And it's why so many people go backwards. And it's a real shame, because they work so hard for that 12 weeks, right? And they just end up worse, back to the same place within a month. And then they look for the next 12-week challenge, right? Because they never actually, they don't go through that 4-year cycle and put their 3Ss to the test, right? Like my thing is always, can you do it on a cold, wet, windy night in Stoke? And if you can pull it off there, and that's things like Diwali, that's things like Christmas, if you can stick to your structures, and if you can go to these events. I had we had one member report back this week saying that they went into Diwali and they had something, and their number one, their taste buds were like, I don't actually like this anymore, and they physically just stopped. And then for the rest of the time, they simply did not partake in the food activities, not because of guilt or not because they thought these foods were bad for them. They simply didn't want to. They simply made the choice to just not have the food that was available and just to spend their time with their family and their loved ones. And they still had an amazing time. No one heckled them. No one gave them a hard time for doing it. They just made the choice, right? And this, I think, is a huge difference in the mindset shift, right? One person could go into this Diwali and think, oh, I feel so restricted. I feel I'm on a restrictive diet. This is horrible. Poor me. Another one comes in and says, no, I choose to not have these foods. You go to a restaurant and people are eating food around you that, I don't know, that you may want or may have wanted in the past. There's a difference in saying, I choose to not have these foods because I know it's not going to fuel me effectively, versus, oh, I feel so restrictive. I'm such a victim. Poor me. Why are my friends enjoying all these foods? I can't. Same situation, completely different mindset. And that mindset shift, I think, takes months, 12 months. It takes a long time to be able to walk into a restaurant, walk into an event and go, I choose to not have that, or I choose to eat the food that I eat, versus feeling guilt or feeling pressure or feeling like you have to practice willpower. Like, when was the last time you guys ever thought, oh, I really need to use my willpower for this?
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? It doesn't happen.
Do you not watch motivational?
Not real.
Do you not watch motivational videos before family meals?
Oh, of course, yeah.
This person who asked the question, he said to me, "Oh, my friend did RNT a few years ago, back when around like 2018. He did a 3-month, and then he did a 3-month again. He did it twice with you guys." And I just said to him, "Do you want to do it twice, or do you want to do it once and do it right?" Because that's the reason why we stopped doing that, because people will do it once, and then they'll be back 3-6 months later, and I don't want that. I'd rather you do it once and do it right and never do it again. You know,
and it's not like the second time, another 3 months doesn't solve it. Like,
no,
4 lots of 3 months isn't the same as one set of 12 months. You know, like
exactly.
You're just repeating the same thing. And I actually had a really interesting comment from a client the day's long-term one, who manages social situations really well, but was saying that this Christmas it's going to be a new challenge for him, because he said the first Christmas he went through, he was in a fat loss phase where things are quite black and white. I mean, you didn't have to eat out of a Tupperware on Christmas Day, but it's quite clear cut. The next Christmas was COVID, so it was Christmas time in a muscle building phase, but it was without social, with severely limited socials. Whereas this time, still in a muscle building phase, but you know that's where now socials are all up, but because you're in a muscle building phase, people don't find it as easy to understand, well, why are you not having 10 pints? Why are you not having all the desserts? Thought you were bulking. And so he's very well equipped. I'm sure he's going to smash it, but he highlighted to me, actually, this is actually still going to be, even though it's his third Christmas in a more, healthy lifestyle, it's still a new challenge for him. And it's a new set of challenges for him to be focusing on.
Well, that's actually the big, probably we didn't cover it earlier, that's the big muscle building challenge when it comes to nutrition, is that everyone around you is going to be like, oh, you're building, like you only need more food. So yeah, I need more food, but not that much more food. And I think that's another one, is when you're dieting, you've got an easy excuse. When you're not, if your friends aren't part of that same sort of thinking, it can become very difficult. That's why I put a post this morning. It's like the 2 underrated reasons why people don't get in shape or stay in shape is bad relationships and a bad job, or a job they don't like. Those are like the 2 secret ways that people gain weight. Right? They're eating themselves to squash their stress from relationships or their work.
Yeah, poor stress management techniques. That's what it comes down to. Poor coping strategies.
I think often the relationships are just built on a mutual poor relationship with food and or poor stress management. I think that's 100%. I think most people who really struggle, you might not get it out of them first off, but over time you'll find that there is
all relationships,
a relationship issue in there. Yeah.
My aunt said to me, and she's a young aunt, she's not super old. My young aunt said to me on the weekend, she said, last year was so good when I was around this time, because there was no events. It was now this year just there's so many like events because people are making up for lost time. And she's like, oh yeah, I was speaking to my life coach about this, and my life coach said to me, you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. You need to look at this. You need to audit your circles. I thought that's actually good advice, right? And I thought, well, we could listen to this podcast that we did recently called Fix Your Relationships Now. And she said to me, the biggest problem with all these events, as nice as these people are, it's just obsession with food. It's like, I just have to drink all these bottles of wine, I have to eat all these foods. Oh, you don't have to, but I get where you're coming from, right? I get the challenge that you're facing. And it's like the real challenge is not trying to create willpower. The real challenge is deciding if these are the people you want to be around. And I think more people are in that position than they think they are. Mm-hmm. And it's like most people probably don't want to have that much alcohol, but they just feel like they have to because that's just part of the game, right? So it's just like disconnecting from the game and understanding if you actually want to be in that or not is a big part of this. But like you said, it might not come out in the beginning, but as you iterate, it's usually going to be one of those few things. That it's going to be a relationship, either your spouse or your inner circle or your work, something related to work.
I think if you have any situation where you feel in your head you have to, and I say like have to, eat or drink a certain amount or a certain thing, then that is a massive red light that there's something not optimal about that relationship. That might be like your spouse, like a really big part. It may just be like a distant, like old school friends, a distant aunt, whatever. So you may not see them all, but like there is something not good about that relationship. It doesn't mean that you need to cut them out or completely remove them from your life, potentially. It may just mean you need to spend less time with them. Like if you know that group of friends, you have to drink 20 pints every time you see them. Well, either you don't see them at all, or you just reduce the frequency that you see them at. Or you then try and just start correcting, what the discrepancy is there. Because potentially they might be feeling the same way as well. But especially your inner circle, like that 5 closest people, you got to make a massive priority of making sure those relationships are good, because otherwise you won't transform.
And if they're not in your immediate vicinity, you need to optimize your virtual circle. Right, guys?
Like having a cohort of 5 people who are like-minded on the journey.
100%. 100%.
So just to wrap up this podcast, I know we touched on quite a few different topics, but they all do tie in together. And the way we're going to tie it all together is not putting people off muscle building phases. That's number one thing. It's all literally just, I think we've discussed all the stages of the journey. You've got the period of getting into shape. Then you've got that for people who want to build muscle, 2 or 3 cycles of 2 years on, maybe a tidy up, 2 years on, maybe a tidy up, 2 years on, maybe a tidy up, until you reach your desired physique. And then you're going to probably end up where we are. And you either look at how you can maintain a sweet spot, or you start moving into other ventures in your fitness, so you can still enjoy all the benefits that you get from training and living a healthy lifestyle, but just in different modalities. And I think that's where most people will find value in this podcast specifically is that you've got to go through those cycles to then get to the other side. And that comes with, for muscle building ambitions anyway, probably 2 to 3 cycles of 2 to 3 years each of building. Get your physique that you want, then you focus on just learning how to maintain it. Because after that, if you've done those properly, you probably won't build much more muscle, if at all. And you'll probably be just tired of doing that more than anything, and you just want to focus on maintaining it. That's probably going to be the likely answer. So yeah, I think that ties it up very, very nicely. Any final comments on that?
No, I think you nailed that.
Smashed it.